Hey everybody, Tom Davis here. I'm a managing partner of Remote Production Group here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also the president of Seismic Sound, which is a post-production facility here in town. And we're talking about third-ear speakers. We recently installed in this truck we're in, Orion, the third-ear AT26s for the front speakers and the AT6s for the surround speakers, and it changed everything. The first time I heard these speakers was in a warehouse at the Sound Image Shop here in Nashville. Chris had a pair of prototypes set up, and I walked out one of the back rooms, and from 40 feet away, I heard these speakers, and it stopped me in my tracks, saying, "What are those?" And I walked over to check them out, and the first thing I noticed was, in a big, open, echoey warehouse, how clear and precise they sounded, even from across the room. And as I walked up closer to them, it didn't change. The spectral balance and everything was like the same. And I'd never heard anything like that before. And I've used every speaker on the planet in my entire career. So that's where I first really got to know Chris, because he was showcasing these speakers with this new technology he came up with. A few months later, he came out to Seismic Sound, my facility, my post facility, and brought a pair, the next generation he had created. And I had just taken over another space in this building that we're housed in that needed some serious sound treatment. It was a room that had been built and put together by another company, and they left it, so it became available. When I first put up the other speakers I've been using, I realized this room sounds terrible. We're going to have to really do some work on it to be able to work in here. Well, Chris brought his third-ear speakers out, and we put them up and hit play on some Apple Music. And I couldn't believe how great they sounded in this room without the treatment that we knew we were going to have to do. So that was a second environment I'd heard them in, and went, oh my goodness, I could sit down and mix on these right now in this room with crappy acoustics. The third time I heard them was when we were considering buying them for this truck here. And Chris loaned us a demo pair to take to New York for a gig in this truck. And my partner, John Harris, who is one of the best, if not the best, live music mixers in the country, maybe the planet. And he's worked with everybody from Tony Bennett to Lady Gaga to U2 to Metallica. I mean, the guy can mix anything. So we put them up for him to work on. So that's the first time I heard them in this truck. Same thing. They didn't sound any different no matter where I've heard them. So that was the sealing deal for us. And the big thing that we really noticed, I noticed right away, was not only do they fill any environment they're in really well and consistently across different environments, but you can stand anywhere in the room, even clear off to the side, and you still hear the center image coming out of the center. And any engineer that I've shown these to has the same comment, and they all scratch their heads. How is that even possible? Trucks are tricky because they're kind of noisy. This one's pretty good as far as trucks go, but they're kind of noisy. You might be close to the stage, so you're hearing, environmental noise as well. Not only do you want them to sound good here in the sweet spot, but you're going to have a producer or an artist may come in to hear, or an artist rep. Well, everybody can't sit in the sweet spot. You can be anywhere in this truck, and you can tell if the hi-hat's loud enough. I mean, subtle things like that you can hear. The back of this truck is the engineering area where the Pro Tools rigs are and all that. You can walk through that door and be back there, and you can hear what the mix sounds like. I've never heard a speaker do that. In my Studio B, where we had them in there, you could stand out through the door in the hallway and hear what they sounded like. When I experienced that, I looked at Chris and said, this is like alien technology. One of the things that we really noticed in our workflow is that the mid-range on these things sound very crisp and clear, but you can be listening to them at a show level, at a pretty good SPL for 3 days, and go home and realize I have no ear fatigue. And When you work long hours in front of a console doing a mix or a tracking session or a broadcast, you can get to the point, especially when you start to get a little tired, that you start to not be sure what you're hearing, right? You start to lose the objectivity of what you're listening to. So then you become a little unsure, and your ears start to get tired. We have not experienced that, and that's not just me. I've heard other engineers say that yeah, we can work for 3 days, for 10 hours a day with these things, and it feels great every time. So that was huge. I think Third Ear has created and developed here is the way they're tuned. They need very little EQ voicing in any environment. So they've right off the bat eliminated phase issues between the different drivers and speakers. One of the things that is a big factor that any engineer will tell you is, yeah, everything can sound great in a studio. How does it sound when it leaves to wherever it's going, a broadcast or on a streaming platform or the radio? How does it sound in my car? How does it sound in headphones? I have found that when it leaves the room, it sounds like we think it's going to sound. There have been situations where we're doing a live stream and one of us will get in the back and put on some headphones and pull up the stream and listen to it. And we're going, son of a gun. It sounds really, really good. That has increased our workflow situation because we find ourselves doing less revisions. I've heard stories of mix engineers sending it to mastering, and the mastering guy calls back and says, did somebody already master this? Because they didn't know what to do with it. It sounded so perfect. That's pretty rare. That's extremely rare. So that's been a huge plus in just shortening the time frame we have to do things, that we need to do things. The biggest feature in the Third Ear speakers for me is the fact that you can stand anywhere in the studio, or in this case, the truck, and hear a true representation of what the mix is. When you have multiple people walking around and coming and going, there's only so many places you can be. It doesn't seem to matter where you are in the room. Even somebody clear off to one side, you can still hear the center image coming out of the middle, which is just crazy. I've never heard any other speaker do that. I mean, you can even stand almost behind one of them and it still sounds like it's just the way they fill the room in such a way that you almost don't even, if you covered the speakers up with something, you probably couldn't point out where they are. That's huge to me, and especially for immersive type mixing, for 5.1 and Atmos, or any kind of immersive. You don't want to pinpoint where the speakers are, and they fill the room in such a beautiful way. And it doesn't seem to matter any room that they're in. They sound the same. And I personally have experienced that. So that is the big number one thing for me, because there's a lot of speakers, there's a lot of choices, and everybody's got an opinion about, oh, I got to use these, I got to use that. I mean, I've been in this business long enough where NS10s were the one, right? And they sounded terrible. But for some reason, they seemed to work well when you took it out of that room. They sounded good. There's other manufacturers that the speakers themselves sound pretty good, but they're a little too hyped. So when you take the mix away, you go, oh, geez, it's missing some sparkle. It's missing some depth, because it sounded good in the studio. So that's the biggest reason that I love these so much, is that I really can trust what we're doing, what we're hearing is going to hold up no matter where the mix goes. When we bought this truck, we did a lot of renovations to it and updates. The speakers that were in it were somewhat popular by mixers, but I personally never liked them, because those speakers were so tuned to the sweet spot that a foot or two off to the side or behind the engineer's head, you couldn't hear what you were hearing. So I said, we got to put something else in. Of course, I immediately called Chris, because I knew that he was starting manufacturing these now. And I'd heard them enough that I said, these are what we want to have in here. So what I didn't expect was one of our clients hated those speakers, the original speakers as well. We got the gig for a big project he had because of these speakers. And he went from, because he likes this console and the whole environment, and he likes us, but he didn't like those speakers. So he was talking about, well, I might want to bring in my own, and I have a Trinoff, that I use in my studio that really changed everything the way I work, because he's an engineer as well and a producer. And I said, okay, well, before we do all that, why don't you come out and just hear these? So I got him to come out, and we fired some stuff up, and it didn't take but a minute. He walked around, he sat, he stood, he went, okay, done. These sound fantastic. He played some things that he had of his own, things that he'd engineered and produced, played those and went, done, great. I just made his life easier. So because of that, we have a client that will always call us first. And it's mostly about that he knows what these speakers are. So that I didn't expect that as much, because we don't get those kinds of, even in the studio business, and I've learned this years ago in my career. Clients, unless they're engineer level clients, they don't really care that much about what you use. They're going to come to you because of the skill set that an engineer has. And I've proven that in my career of when I used to freelance and move from studio to studio before I started my own companies. My clients would follow me. They didn't care that I was on an SSL this time or an Even this time, or I had Genelex, or I had whatever. They didn't care. So I learned early on that the tools that we put in place are for us to do the best job we can. What I didn't expect was for people that aren't engineers to hear something in here and immediately go, wow, this sounds great. And we have to explain to them, look, part of what you're hearing is these things. It's like, yeah, we're pretty good at what we do, but these make our job so much easier and better. One of my partners said it really well one time, talking about clients not caring. He said, when you hire somebody to build a deck, you don't tell him what hammer to use. You hire him because of the job that he does. So we're the same way. What I didn't expect was people to say, what are these speakers? And that was pretty huge. I guess in retrospect, I guess I'm not surprised, but it wasn't something that crossed my mind that would be a factor in this. So the buzz got out there that, hey, this truck is the best sounding truck around. What we've also noticed, because of the way you can be anywhere in the room, I feel like anytime new technology comes out, one of the sales pitches is, oh, it's going to speed up your workflow, right? That's not necessarily the case. What it does allow you to do is try more things in the amount of time that you have. When we're mixing with other people in the room that have a say, I have found that it becomes much more efficient when they can be standing over here against the wall and hear the same thing I'm hearing. And therefore, we're speeding things up by saying, okay, well, come over here and hear it and see if you still agree with that. So that has made the workflow, in some ways, it really has made it a little faster. Throughout my career, going into any studio or any environment, one of the things that we all have to do is get acclimated to what that room sounds like and what those speakers sound like. So it's pretty common to have something that whether it was something that you've mixed or just something that you use. I mean, it could be a Steely Dan record. Back in the early days of my career, everybody had a CD of Back in Black, AC/DC, because it was sonically so strong. And you could play one song and go, okay, I know what this sounds like. You don't have to do that with these speakers. I mean, you can trust them. You don't scratch your head going, is the low end right? Is the high end right? I mean, you play something that you know and you go, bam, got it. Any studio I would go into, if I saw these speakers, I could sit down and just start working because I know what they're going to sound like. Another thing that is so amazing about these speakers is the way the spectral balance doesn't seem to change at different sound levels, at different SPL levels. They sound great loud, they sound great soft, they sound great anywhere in the middle. Everything sounds great really loud, you get it down low, they start to sound thin and weak. These don't do that. You can monitor at any sound level and the spectral balance stays the same. And that's huge because we're constantly turning things up and down to hear different, how's it working? Some people like to mix really loud. Some people mix soft. Sometimes you're doing a little of both. And that can throw you off if you turn things up and down too much. These, it doesn't change.